I want to explain this hack, this food hack. Uh, and this doesn't really work if you're living in a country where like you only have like 20 cents a day to eat or something like that. But if you're living in a Western nation and you're just getting started surviving, or maybe you're getting back into survival, maybe you've gone through a rough time, there's this food hack where basically you can live off of $0 food budget. Now, in reality, it's not $0, so the title's a bit misleading, but it kind of ends up being up that way. So, if you look at rice, rice is what, like 20 pounds for $20, so $1 a pound, right? And that's just like with basic ass rice. So I've got a rice bag in this box here, and I've been eating from this rice bag and eating from this rice bag and eating from this rice bag, and it just doesn't seem to run out. These rice bags last me like a very long time. I can basically eat every day very cheaply for a very long time, just food every day, and it would take a long time to run out. And so, and you may say, oh, I don't want to eat rice every day. I don't want to eat just rice. Well, you can add in other things that might kind of spice up the experience, like eggs, or like butter, or like salt, or tuna, or just something cheap, just cheap stuff to make it go down better, to make it taste better. But you could tell me, I don't want to eat rice and tuna every day. I don't want to eat rice and eggs every day, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying eat the cheapest possible meals every day, right? What I'm saying is, this is the hack, that if you have a stockpile of food, even if it's just pasta, even if it's just ramen noodles, if you have a stockpile of food, then you could completely run out of money for food, and you would still be able to survive until the next paycheck. And then once you get your next couple paychecks, then you got food again, right? And that's the hack. So let me explain that just one more time. So the way that I used to be, the way that some people are, is they're just eating out every day, or they're just doing something where they're buying very perishable, very expensive foods, right? And not everyone does this, but some people do this. And what it does is, it means that if you run out of money for food on your weekly budget, then you're gonna have to scrounge together for food, right? It's gonna be hard for you. You might have to beg some neighbors for food or something, right? So, if you have a stockpile of cheap food, maybe not the best food, but cheap, palatable food, if you have a stockpile of this, then that's going to buffer you over if you run out of food budget, right? So you generally want to keep at least 6 months worth of food in your cabinets, right? Just wherever you're staying. And the easiest way to get started with this is just getting like a couple 20-pound bags of rice for like $40. That's just going to be like a very, very basic survival food that's going to make it so that if you run out of money for food, you'll still survive, right? You won't die. You'll stay alive. And then from there on, after the rice, you could also do the same thing with flour if you know how to make like basic bread. If you don't know how to make basic bread, you can go and look up how to make bread with just flour. Flour is a little bit cheaper than rice, but I prefer rice. You can also get rice flour. So you got your basic stuff like your rice flour, your pasta, your ramen, your rice, potatoes. The cheapest of all is potatoes. If you just let some potatoes grow in the ground and come back, it's always good to have potatoes growing in the ground that you just forget about. Because if you're ever like totally starving, you could just go start digging and you'd find all these potatoes that you'd been left growing for a long time. But and that's free. But basically, with the rice, you get a couple 20-pound bags of rice, and now you're not going to die. Now you're definitely going to live. Now you're definitely going to survive, right? And from then on, it gets down to like adding on foods in addition to the rice. That's going to like make it better, One of the first things I would say to get is powdered butter, which is a little bit more expensive than regular butter. And then, because the powdered butter lasts a very long time on the shelf, right? And then you got the salt, maybe some spice, and as well as that, a big thing of gravy powder. And that gravy powder and the powdered butter and the spice is all gonna make that rice so much better, right? The next things you're gonna want to get is like is tuna. Tuna is like $1 a can right now in the year of our Lord 2025. It's very cheap. Just whatever the cheapest canned meat is, you want to get a bunch of cans of that. And you don't necessarily have to eat it every day when you're struggling, but every now and then I just throw in a can of tuna with the rice, and it just makes it that much better. If you don't like fish, get canned chicken or get something else. But if you don't mind the smell of fish, a tuna or some canned chicken is gonna just add to that meal. Getting canned vegetables, any kind of canned vegetables like peas are really cheap, or you can get canned mixed vegetables, and that goes well with the rice. Getting tortillas last a pretty good amount of time in the pantry. I've never had tortillas go bad in my pantry. They just sit on the shelf for a long time and are pretty good. You can make your own tortillas. If you go on YouTube, look up how to make tortillas with just flour. But just getting some tortillas to add to it really helps. Canned veggies, and then eggs. So like eggs aren't necessarily like don't last forever in the pantry. But like it's pretty easy to like keep at least one package of eggs in the fridge, if not two. And when you get in the habit of eating eggs, you eat more cheaply. Eggs are really delicious when you cook them right, and very nutritional. And adding the eggs to the rice is really going to make it a lot better than just plain rice with gravy powder, right? You could technically survive with just rice and gravy powder, but it's going to be miserable. Adding in the canned vegetables, adding in the canned meats, and having eggs ready to go, and having some bread, that's really going to make a big difference in terms of these survival meals. So on my website, THEFAST.neocities.org. On that website, I've got a bunch of foods and ideas for how you can preserve food so that you can build up your stockpile of food. And like you can say like, oh, it's for the apocalypse. Oh, it's like for the Great Depression. Yeah, basically like if you ever got to a point where you're screwed and you're like, I'm financially screwed right now. Like I'm really not doing very well financially, right? Having 6 months of food can save you. Having 6 months of food ready to go, having canned vegetables, having flour, having ramen and pasta, having potatoes, having eggs, having powdered butter, having peanut butter and jelly preserves, just having those basic, like long-lasting foods on the shelf is going to make it so that in an emergency, you can have a food budget of $0. The caveat is that it's not actually $0, and once you burn through all of your reserve food, then you're back to spending money again, right? But for that buffer time, it just prevents you from having to scrounge for food. It prevents you from really suffering And so each week I put like $0 towards my food budget, like zero. And my when I run out of money to buy takeout or whatever, buy whatever nice food I want to buy, I just I just go back to eating whatever's in the pantry, just whatever I can cook up. Usually rice and eggs, but it might be rice, might be tuna and eggs, or it might be like, who knows. But just basic ass foods to keep you alive, right? And then so like I'm eating really well for a few days, and then I'm roughing it for a few days, but it's not that bad because because there's some good recipes with these survival foods. And then of course like, let's say that I ran out of my bag of rice, I'm just down $20, right? I'm not having to like scrounge for food. I just throw down $20, and then so it's like I do have a food budget. I do have like money that I spend on food, but the way that I kind of do it, I kind of break my paychecks in half. So like half goes towards something I want, and the other half will go towards either like rent or savings because I have really low rent in this trailer. And I'll throw down like $300 for some food, and that might be food that would last me like weeks. That's weeks of food. And most people might spend like $200 a week or $200 every 2 weeks on food, whereas I'm spending $300 and it's lasting me weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's just because I'm buying these cheaper foods. I'm buying like Ritz crackers and cookies is another really good one. It's cookies is just like a cheap treat. And sometimes when you're hungry, you just pop a cookie in your mouth and you go good for another few hours. So that's the food hack. Is like, it does still technically cost money for food, but like as long as your pantry is full of like a bunch of different cheap food options, like 6 months of cheap food options, you're able to at any point in time just put $0 into your food budget and just coast. And that's like a super life hack for survival and financial independence.